darkness has been generous lately. As I record this, Void of Fears stands just 1,000 subscribers away from our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Each of you who've joined us has fed the shadows. Every like, every comment, every subscription, they all strengthen what lurks beyond the screen. Your support carries us through the void. The entity watching over this channel sees your devotion. Now, let's dive into the void where tonight's nightmare awaits you. The first time I felt it was on August 17th, 2024. A subtle vibration beneath my feet, like the heartbeat of something massive. I was 2 miles below the surface at Area 51, in a newly drilled access tunnel that officially didn't exist. None of us were supposed to be there. None of us were supposed to know what lay beneath the most secretive military installation in America. And now, 3 months later, I sometimes wish I could forget. The nightmares haven't stopped. Every night, I see it pulsing in the darkness, growing larger, spreading its influence through the Earth's crust like cancer through a body. I wake up drenched in sweat, feeling the phantom sensation of something moving beneath my skin. The doctors tell me it's psychosomatic, a trauma response. They're lying. I know what I saw. I know what found us down there. And I know it's still spreading. My name is Dr. Alexander Fleming. I'm a specialized geologist who spent 15 years studying subterranean anomalies for NASA. I've mapped caverns on 3 continents, analyzed underground lake systems that haven't seen light in millions of years, and helped design equipment for potential Martian subsurface exploration. But nothing, absolutely nothing, in my career prepared me for what we found beneath the Nevada desert. I should have known something was wrong from the beginning. The signs were there. The unusual urgency, the excessive secrecy, the nervous glances exchanged by senior officials. But like any scientist offered unprecedented access to the world's most mysterious military installation, I ignored my instincts in favor of curiosity. That curiosity nearly destroyed us all. The call came at 2:37 a.m. on a sweltering summer night in July. I remember it clearly because I had just finished reviewing seismic data from a volcanic formation in Indonesia. The summer heat had been oppressive, forcing me to work through the night when temperatures dropped to merely uncomfortable levels. My phone rang with an unidentified number, and a voice I didn't recognize informed me that a government car would arrive at my home in 30 minutes. I was to pack for an extended field operation in extreme conditions. No further details would be provided until I arrived on site. When I asked who was calling, the line went dead. I stood in my darkened bedroom, the phone still clutched in my hand, wondering if I had dreamed the conversation. Then, headlights swept across my window as a black SUV pulled into my driveway exactly 30 minutes later. 2 men in nondescript suits approached my door. They didn't introduce themselves or explain anything. One simply said, "Dr. Fleming, please come with us. Everything you need has been prepared." I grabbed a jacket, my credentials, and phone. As I stepped outside, one of the men took my phone and dropped it into a lead-lined bag. "Security protocol," he explained without emotion. "You'll be issued appropriate communication devices at the facility." His partner handed me a blindfold. "Standard procedure, sir. You'll understand soon enough." The next 18 hours remained largely a blur of movement, being driven for hours, then transferred to what felt like a small aircraft, then another vehicle, all while blindfolded. No one spoke to me during this time except to ask if I needed water or to use a bathroom. The silence was more intimidating than any explicit threat could have been. When the blindfold was finally removed, I found myself in a stark, windowless room containing only a bed, a desk, and a sealed envelope with my name typed on it. Inside were detailed non-disclosure agreements and a brief overview of why I had been brought in. Anomalous? geological and seismic readings detected at secure government installation. Expert consultation required. The brief mentioned nothing about Area 51, nothing about anything biological or alive, nothing that would have prepared me for what I would soon encounter, just technical language about rhythmic disturbances and unexplained thermal variations, detected at significant depth. In retrospect, they told us just enough to pique our scientific curiosity without revealing anything that might have made us refuse to participate. I spent that night alone in the room, reviewing the limited materials provided, attempting to form preliminary hypotheses based on the sparse data. My best guess was an unknown geothermal feature, perhaps a previously undetected magma chamber with unusual pressure release patterns. Nothing in my training suggested anything more extraordinary. At exactly 6 o'clock the next morning, a knock at my door signaled the true beginning of what would become the most terrifying experience of my life. 48 hours after that initial late-night phone call, I was being escorted through security checkpoints so classified that the guards themselves wore no identification. The desert heat was oppressive as I was led to a nondescript bunker at the far edge of the facility. I had by now deduced our location. The layout matched what little was publicly known about Area 51, and the desert landscape was unmistakably Nevada. Still, hearing a guard casually reference Groom Lake in conversation with another confirmed it. Inside the bunker, the temperature dropped dramatically, and I found myself in a room with 11 other people, a mix of scientists, military personnel, and government officials I'd never met before. The contrast between the searing heat outside and the almost frigid air conditioning inside made my skin prickle with goosebumps. I recognized a few faces from academic journals and conferences. Dr. Eleanor Rivera, a leading seismologist whose controversial theories about deep earth structures had been largely dismissed by the scientific community. Dr. Anil Patel, whose pioneering work on extremophile organisms had won international acclaim, and Professor Hiroshi Yamamoto, a geophysicist who disappeared from academic circles 3 years ago without explanation. The others were strangers to me, though their body language spoke of military training and government authority. Dr. Rivera nodded slightly when she saw me, a professional acknowledgement tinged with unease. Her normally confident demeanour seemed subdued, as if she already suspected that whatever had brought us here was beyond conventional scientific understanding. Dr. Patel was arranging what looked like specialised environmental sampling equipment, his movements precise but tense. Professor Yamamoto stood apart from the others, staring at a digital display of seismic readings with an expression I couldn't interpret. Not fear or confusion, but something like recognition. A tall man with greying temples and the ramrod posture of career military stood at the front of the room. The name Wilson was embroidered on his uniform, though he wore no rank insignia that I could recognise. His face bore the weathered look of someone who had seen combat, but his eyes held something else, a haunted quality that would soon make terrible sense. Commander Wilson didn't waste time with pleasantries. As soon as the room was secured, he activated a holographic display in the centre of the conference table. 3 weeks ago, our seismic monitors detected an anomaly approximately 2 miles beneath this facility. Initially, we believed it was a minor fault line activation. Then we noticed the pattern. The lights dimmed as Dr. Rivera, apparently already briefed, brought up a visualization on the main screen. A waveform pulsed with unsettling regularity, rising and falling in a rhythm that was unmistakable to anyone with a basic understanding of biology. "It's breathing," I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. Several heads turned toward me, expressions ranging from solemn agreement to barely concealed fear. Dr. Patel nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the display. That was our conclusion as well, Wilson replied, his voice steady but tight. Whatever is down there appears to be respiring, and over the past 3 weeks the amplitude has been steadily increasing. Dr. Rivera stepped forward, her fingers dancing across the control pad to expand the visualization. The pattern isn't just consistent with respiration, it's showing increasing complexity. Look at these harmonics. She highlighted secondary waveforms that pulsed in synchronization with the main pattern. These aren't random, they're structured, almost like language, or a heartbeat with arrhythmia, suggested Dr. Patel. Whatever it is, Wilson continued, it's accelerating. When first detected, the pattern completed one cycle every 27 minutes. It's now cycling every 18 minutes, and showing no signs of stabilizing. Our orders are to identify and, if possible, contain the source. A cold, heavy silence fell over the room. Professor Yamamoto broke it with a question that sent chills down my spine. And if it can't be contained? Wilson's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. That's not an option we're considering at this time, Professor. A short, sharp-featured man in an immaculate black suit stepped forward from the shadows at the back of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Special Agent Foster. I'll be overseeing security for this operation. His voice was smooth, practiced, devoid of any regional accent. The carefully cultivated neutrality of someone trained to reveal nothing of themselves. Before we proceed further, everyone must sign these additional non-disclosure agreements. What you're about to see and hear is classified beyond top secret. Disclosure of any kind will be considered an act of treason. As I signed my name to documents that effectively surrendered any right to speak about what I might discover, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was agreeing to far more than confidentiality. I was signing away my right to warn the world if necessary. Looking around, I saw the same realization dawning on the faces of my scientific colleagues. Only later would I understand that this moment was our last chance to walk away. From this point forward, we were committed to a path that would transform us all in ways no one could have predicted. The briefing continued for another hour, covering the technical aspects of our mission. We would be using a revolutionary drilling technology to access the source of the anomaly. The equipment had been developed based on classified research that no one would elaborate on. Our team would descend in stages, establishing monitoring stations at regular intervals, with the ultimate goal of reaching and identifying whatever was generating the breathing pattern. What wasn't stated explicitly, but became increasingly clear as the briefing progressed, was that this wasn't the first attempt to investigate the anomaly. References to previous readings and established safety protocols suggested earlier expeditions, though no one mentioned their outcomes. At the conclusion of the briefing, we were separated into specialty teams for equipment fitting and final preparations. I was paired with Dr. Rivera to oversee geological analysis, while Dr. Patel would lead environmental monitoring. Professor Yamamoto was assigned to a team focused on what they vaguely termed energy signature analysis. As we were being fitted with specialized environmental suits designed for deep underground operation, I managed a brief whispered exchange with Dr. Rivera. "Have you noticed how they avoid mentioning any previous expeditions?" I asked, keeping my voice low as a technician adjusted my suit's oxygen recycling system. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "And how no one's asking the obvious question about what happens if we encounter something alive down there?" Her eyes met mine, conveying what we both suspected, but dared not say aloud. We weren't the first team to be sent below, and the others hadn't returned with good news. Within 4 hours of that initial briefing, our team was assembled at the entrance to what would become our descent into Nightmare. A massive drilling apparatus, unlike any I'd seen in my professional career, stood ready to carve our path into the earth. Its design was oddly organic, with components that seemed to flex and adjust without obvious mechanical means. When I inquired about its specifications, Agent Foster smoothly changed the subject. That was 6 hours ago. Now I'm standing in this claustrophobic tunnel, watching my breath form clouds in the suddenly chilled air as our team pushes deeper into the earth. The specially designed drill machine ahead of us carves through rock with surprising efficiency, leaving behind a smooth-walled passage, reinforced with a polymer coating that hardens almost instantly. The low hum of its operation reverberates through my body, mingling unpleasantly with the deeper vibration coming from below. The descent has been unnervingly quick. The drilling technology we're using isn't like anything I've seen before, cutting through solid bedrock as if it were butter, leaving behind perfectly formed tunnels. When I asked about it, Agent Foster merely said it was developed from recovered materials. I didn't press further. Some questions are better left unasked in places like this. Our team moves with practiced efficiency, despite most of us having only met hours ago. Military personnel establish security perimeters at regular intervals. Technical specialists set up monitoring equipment. Scientists like myself collect samples and readings. The discipline is impressive, but it can't mask the growing unease that permeates our group. The further we descend, the more pronounced the breathing pattern becomes. At first, it was detectable only through sensitive equipment. Now, at nearly a mile below the surface, I can feel it as a subtle vibration through the soles of my boots, a rhythmic pulse that seems to emanate from the earth itself. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Dr. Patel, the team's biologist, walks beside me. Her instruments continuously sample the air, testing for anything unusual. So far, she's found nothing concerning, just the expected mixture of gases with slightly elevated carbon dioxide levels from our own exhalations. But she remains uneasy, as do we all. "Something's not right about this air," she murmurs, adjusting one of her sensors. "The composition is normal, but there's an energy signature I can't identify. Almost like static electricity, but organic." I'm about to ask her to elaborate when Professor Yamamoto calls my attention to the rock walls. "Fleming, look at this stratification. It doesn't match any geological record for this region." He runs his hand along a strange swirling pattern in the stone. "These aren't natural formations." He's right. The rock layers don't follow normal geological principles. Instead of horizontal striations formed over millions of years, the patterns swirl and curve like frozen liquid. In some places, they form structures reminiscent of enormous fossilized cells. "The pattern changed again," Commander Wilson calls back from his position near the front of our procession. "It's increasing in frequency." I check my own seismic detector. The rhythm has indeed altered. What was once a slow, steady pattern now pulses with greater urgency, almost as if whatever is generating it knows we're approaching. "We're being noticed," Dr. Rivera whispers beside me, her eyes fixed on her own instruments. "It's responding to our presence." The temperature continues to drop as we descend. At nearly 2 miles below the surface, we should be experiencing increasing heat from the Earth's core. Instead, it's becoming cold enough that I can see frost forming on metal equipment. The laws of thermodynamics don't seem to apply here. Periodically, the tunnel vibrates with tremors that don't register on our seismic equipment, as if they're occurring in some dimension adjacent to, but not quite overlapping with our own. Each time, everyone stops, exchanges glances, but says nothing. What is there to say when reality itself seems to be breaking down around you? The military personnel become increasingly tense, their hands never straying far from their weapons. I notice they've switched from standard firearms to strange, bulky devices that emit a low, electrical hum. When I ask a nearby soldier about them, he only says they're specialized containment tools. For what, he doesn't specify. At one rest point, I overhear Commander Wilson in hushed conversation with Agent Foster. "Just like the 97 expedition," Wilson says, his voice barely audible, Same temperature drop, same pattern acceleration. That team was unprepared, Foster replies dismissively. We've implemented all the recommended protocols from the 0, 8 and 15 attempts. This time will be different. They notice me listening and immediately change the subject, but the implication is clear. This is at least the 4th expedition to investigate whatever lies beneath Area 51. What happened to the previous teams remains unspoken, but their absence from our current mission speaks volumes. As we approach the 2-mile mark, communication with the surface becomes increasingly difficult. Our radio signals return garbled, filled with strange harmonics that sound disturbingly like whispering voices. The technical specialists blame interference from the surrounding rock, but I've worked in deep cave systems around the world and never encountered anything similar. The tunnel curves downward at a steeper angle, and the temperature drops another few degrees. The rocks around us have begun to take on a strange, almost oily sheen that doesn't match any geological formation I've ever encountered. When I run my gloved finger along the surface, the material feels oddly warm despite the cool air. It seems to react to my touch, growing warmer where my finger makes contact. "Do you see that?" I asked Dr. Patel, pointing to the strange discoloration spreading from where I touched the wall. She nods slowly, her expression hidden behind her protective mask. I've been noticing similar reactions throughout the descent. The material becomes more reactive the deeper we go. Like an immune response, Professor Yamamoto suggests, or a nervous system firing. The implications of his words hang in the air between us. No one wants to acknowledge what we're all beginning to suspect, that the Earth itself might be responding to our intrusion. Our communication devices emit periodic bursts of static that grow more frequent and intense as we descend. Sometimes in the static, I think I hear whispers, fragments of words or phrases that vanish before I can make sense of them. When I mentioned this to Commander Wilson, he simply instructed me to switch to a backup channel. But the whispers followed. The drilling machine suddenly slows, its cutting head meeting unexpected resistance. The operators increase power, causing the entire tunnel to vibrate with the machine's effort. For several tense minutes we make no progress. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, if fabric could be made of stone, the drill pushes through. "Dr. Fleming, you need to see this." Agent Foster's voice crackles through my headset. He's stationed at the drilling face with Commander Wilson. I make my way forward, carefully navigating past other team members and equipment. The drilling machine has stopped, its massive cutting head silent for the first time since we began our descent. The sudden absence of its mechanical drone makes the subtle vibration beneath our feet even more noticeable. When I reach the front, Foster points to a section of newly exposed rock, or what should be rock. "Is that," I begin, unable to complete the sentence. "Organic material," Foster confirms, "embedded within the stone." The substance is dark and fibrous, with a texture reminiscent of muscle tissue. It pulses slightly, though whether from our vibrations or its own internal mechanism is impossible to tell. Veins of a blue-black substance run through it, carrying some kind of fluid that glows faintly in the darkness. "It's everywhere," Dr. Rivera says, her voice tight with a mixture of scientific fascination and primal fear. She gestures to the surrounding tunnel walls. "Look closely. It's not just here, it's throughout the entire structure, just beneath the surface." She's right. Now that I know what to look for, I can see that what I thought was normal rock is actually a thin mineral layer covering a vast network of the organic material. We haven't been drilling through stone, we've been cutting into living tissue. I take a sample kit from my bag and carefully extract a small portion for analysis. The material resists the cutting tool, seeming to contract away from the blade. When I finally extract a specimen, a dark, viscous fluid seeps from the cut, smelling faintly of ozone and something else, something ancient and alien. Under the portable microscope, the truth becomes undeniable. The tissue, if that's the correct term, contains cellular structures unlike anything in our biological classification systems. The cells pulse with an internal luminescence that seems to follow the same rhythm as the broader breathing pattern we've been tracking. More disturbing, the cells appear to be reorganizing themselves even as I watch, adapting to their new environment outside the wall. "We need to report this immediately," I say, but Agent Foster shakes his head. "We continue as planned. Command wants eyes on the primary anomaly." "This is insanity," Dr. Patel interjects. "We're clearly dealing with a biohazard of unknown origin. Protocol demands we seal this tunnel and conduct proper containment procedures." Foster's expression doesn't change. "Your concerns are noted, Doctor, but this mission has been authorized at the highest levels. We continue forward." I want to protest further, but the look in his eyes tells me it would be pointless. Whatever chain of command exists here, it doesn't include debate from civilian scientists. Besides, part of me, the curious scientist who has spent a lifetime exploring the unknown, wants to see what lies ahead, despite the growing sense of dread. As we prepare to resume drilling, I notice something that stops my breath. The tissue sample I collected is no longer in its containment unit. The secure case is empty, the locking mechanism still engaged. There's no sign of how the sample escaped, or where it went. When I point this out to Foster, he simply says, "Note it in your report and continue preparations." His lack of surprise tells me more than any briefing could have. They expected this. They knew what we would find down here. The drilling resumes, with a different quality. Now the machine seems to labor more, as if cutting through something that resists in ways stone never could. The sound it makes has changed too, becoming wet and organic like surgery, rather than excavation. Several team members look physically ill at the implications. We establish a new monitoring station at this depth, setting up equipment to track changes in the breathing pattern and environmental conditions. While the technical team works, Dr. Rivera pulls me aside to show me something on her tablet. Historical seismic data from the region dating back to the 1940s. "Look at these patterns," she says, her voice low. "There have been rhythmic anomalies here for as long as we've had the equipment to detect them, but they were subtle, easy to dismiss as instrument error or natural phenomena." She swipes to a new screen showing a clear timeline. They started intensifying in the 1950s, coinciding with the first nuclear tests in the area. Each major test corresponded with an increase in amplitude and frequency. "They were waking it up," I realize aloud. Deliberately, I think. Her expression is grim. The pattern matches controlled stimulation, not random disturbance. They've been poking it for decades, seeing how it responds. Before I can process the implications, Commander Wilson announces we're ready to continue. The drilling machine starts up again, carving deeper into what we now know is living tissue disguised as Earth's crust. The next hour passes in tense silence, broken only by technical communications and the wet, grinding sound of the drill. The breathing pattern continues to accelerate, its rhythm now clearly perceptible, even without instruments. The temperature drops further, reaching near freezing despite our depth. Ice crystals form on exposed metal surfaces and along the edges of the tunnel. Then something changes. The vibration pattern shifts, developing complex harmonics that remind me of music, if music could be composed of subsonic frequencies that make your organs resonate uncomfortably. Several team members report sudden headaches or vertigo. 2 security personnel collapse with nosebleeds, dark fluid tinged with something luminescent streaming from their nostrils. Professor Yamamoto's energy detection equipment begins registering massive spikes that overload its sensors. "Something's happening," he announces unnecessarily. "The energy signature is changing, becoming more coherent. It's almost like..." He never finishes the sentence. His equipment explodes in a shower of sparks, and Yamamoto falls backward, clutching his eyes. When Dr. Patel reaches him, he's mumbling incoherently about seeing it all and the pattern made flesh. Commander Wilson orders the injured personnel escorted back to the surface, but I doubt they'll make it before whatever is happening to them completes its course. The energy readings continue to spike on our remaining equipment, and the breathing pattern accelerates further. "We're close," announces one of the drilling technicians. Sensors indicate a large open space ahead. 3 more hours of drilling brings us to the edge of something extraordinary. Our sensors indicate a massive open space ahead, a cavern that shouldn't exist at this depth. The breathing sound is no longer something we need instruments to detect. We can feel it reverberating through the tunnel, through our bodies. The air thrums with each exhale. The further we descend, the more our equipment malfunctions. Compasses spin wildly, digital displays flicker with strange symbols before resetting, and our communication with the surface becomes increasingly fractured. Only our most basic analog instruments continue to function reliably. Dr. Rivera begins experiencing nosebleeds that leave strange patterns on her notepad, patterns that resemble the markings we've observed on the tunnel walls. 2 security personnel collapse with sudden, severe headaches, their eyes reflecting the same bioluminescence we observed in the tissue samples. Commander Wilson orders them sent back to the surface, but I doubt they'll make it before whatever is happening to them completes its course. "We're close," Professor Yamamoto announces, studying a handheld device of his own design. The source of the breathing pattern is just ahead. Massive energy readings, unlike anything I've ever recorded. The drilling machine begins to struggle, its powerful engines whining as they encounter unexpected resistance. Then, without warning, it surges forward as the resistance suddenly gives way. The drill breaks through with a sudden lurch, and cold, ancient air rushes into our tunnel, carrying with it a scent so alien it defies description. Metallic, yet organic. Sweet, yet putrid. Somehow managing to be all these things simultaneously. Warning klaxons sound as pressure differentials cause wind to rush past us into the newly revealed space. Equipment not properly secured tumbles forward into the darkness. A junior technician loses his footing and slides several feet toward the opening before Dr. Patel manages to grab him. When the chaos subsides, we approach the breach cautiously. The team falls silent as flashlight beams pierce the darkness beyond, illuminating small portions of what lies ahead. None of us speak. None of us can find words adequate to describe what we're seeing. My first thought is that we've broken through into some enormous, prehistoric ecosystem preserved somehow in this subterranean void. But as my eyes adjust and my mind processes the impossible scene before us, I realize this is something far stranger. The cavern extends beyond the reach of our lights in all directions. The walls, floor and ceiling aren't stone. They're composed of the same organic material we found embedded in the rock, but vast in scale. The entire space pulses with a faint bioluminescence that ebbs and flows with the breathing rhythm. The light doesn't illuminate the cavern so much as it defines it, creating depth and dimension where our human eyes would otherwise perceive only darkness. The scale is incomprehensible. Our most powerful spotlights barely reach the nearest walls, and the ceiling, if there is one, remains hidden in darkness. What we can see defies all geological principles. Columns of the organic material rise like enormous trees, supporting nothing, yet pulsing with life. Pools of luminescent fluid gather in depressions, their surfaces rippling with each breath that passes through the chamber. "It's like we're inside a living organism," Dr. Patel whispers, her voice barely audible over the constant rhythmic sound that fills the cavern, as if the entire chamber is a lung or a heart. And at the center, partially illuminated by our lights, lies something that defies comprehension. It resembles nothing so much as an enormous heart If hearts were the size of office buildings and composed of tissue that shifts between solid and liquid states with each pulse, massive vein-like structures extend from it in all directions, disappearing into the walls of the cavern. The entire structure beats in perfect synchronization with the breathing pattern that brought us here. With each contraction, waves of blue-green light course through the veins, spreading throughout the cavern. As we watch, transfixed, parts of the central mass shift and rearrange themselves, forming structures that momentarily resemble organs, limbs, or faces before dissolving back into the pulsating whole. It's as if the entity is dreaming, its subconsciousness manifesting physically before our eyes. "My God," Dr. Rivera whispers, "it's alive." Those 3 simple words break the spell that has held us motionless. The team erupts into frantic activity. Scientists checking instruments, security personnel establishing a perimeter, technicians setting up additional lighting to better observe the phenomenon. Commander Wilson is already relaying information back to the surface, his voice tight with controlled panic. Confirmation of biological entity, unknown classification. Dimensions exceed all projections, requesting immediate consultation with Delta Team. Dr. Patel's air samplers are suddenly alert, detecting complex organic compounds suspended in the atmosphere around us. She studies the readings with growing alarm. "Don't breathe directly," she warns, adjusting her mask. "The air contains spores or particles of some kind. They're complex molecular structures with properties similar to both viruses and prions. But it's too late for such precautions. We've all been exposed since the moment the drill broke through. I can feel something changing already. A subtle shift in perception, as if colors have become slightly more vivid, sounds marginally clearer. The bioluminescence that seemed blue-green moments ago now reveals itself to be a complex spectrum of colors I have no names for. It was waiting for us, Professor Yamamoto says, softly, his eyes never leaving the central mass. All these years, all these centuries, it was waiting for someone to find it. Agent Foster approaches the edge of the platform we've established at the tunnel opening. His normally impassive face shows an emotion I've never seen from him before. Wonder, or perhaps reverence. "Do you understand what we're looking at?" He asks no one in particular. "This isn't just a discovery. This is communion." His words send a chill through me. Something about his tone, the almost religious fervor, strikes me as deeply wrong. I glance at the other team members and notice subtle changes in their expressions. A glassiness to their eyes, a slackness around their mouths. Only Dr. Patel and Commander Wilson seem unaffected, both focused intently on their respective duties. "We need samples from the central mass," Agent Foster announces, already preparing collection equipment. His movements are too eager, too certain for someone facing an entirely unknown entity. The protocols were clear. We extract core material for analysis. "That's not advisable," I counter, struggling to maintain my scientific objectivity when every instinct screams danger. "We have no idea how it might react to invasive procedures. We should establish observational protocols first. Run non-invasive scanning." "The decision has been made, Dr. Fleming," Foster interrupts, his voice suddenly cold. "This mission has objectives beyond simple observation." Dr. Patel steps between Foster and his equipment. As Chief Biohazard Officer, I'm invoking Safety Protocol Omega-7. No direct contact with the organism until we establish basic biological parameters. For a moment, Foster's expression shifts to something inhuman, a flash of rage that distorts his features before he regains control. "Your concerns are noted, Doctor, but overruled." He motions for 2 of his subordinates to accompany him. As they prepare their equipment, I notice their movements have become strangely synchronized, as if choreographed. They move cautiously into the cavern, their footsteps creating ripples across the floor like stones dropped in water. The breathing pattern accelerates slightly as they approach the central mass. "Do you see that?" I ask Commander Wilson, pointing to the floor. The material is responding to their presence. It's creating connection patterns between them and the central structure. Wilson nods grimly. I see it. He touches his communication device. Foster, return to base immediately. That's an order. Foster's team continues forward as if they haven't heard. While this confrontation unfolds, I take the opportunity to examine our surroundings more carefully. I notice markings on the cavern walls, sophisticated patterns etched into the organic material. They don't match any known human language or symbolic system, yet they convey a sense of deliberate communication. Some appear remarkably fresh, while others seem weathered by immense spans of time. Moving closer to one section, I realize the markings form a complex three-dimensional pattern that seems to shift when viewed from different angles. Within these patterns, I begin to recognize familiar elements, mathematical constants, atomic structures, and what appear to be star charts showing configurations that haven't existed for thousands of years. Dr. Fleming, look at this, Dr. Rivera calls from nearby. She's found what appears to be a small alcove in the cavern wall, partially hidden behind a fold of tissue. Inside are objects that are undeniably human-made, old-style military equipment, including what looks like surveying tools from perhaps the 1950s or 60s. Next to these are more modern devices, a digital camera, dated 2013, a satellite phone with government markings, sample containers with faded biohazard symbols. Most disturbing of all is a collection of personal effects. Wedding rings, watches, identification badges with dates spanning decades. They've been here before, I whisper. They found this decades ago. Rivera nods grimly, and they kept coming back. She lifts a weathered notebook, its pages filled with frantic handwriting that breaks down into unintelligible scrawls. This is Dr. Leonard Haynes' field journal. He disappeared during a classified geological survey in 1972. Everyone thought he defected to the Soviets. He never left, I realize, examining the other items. None of them did. Further into the alcove, partially obscured by growth of the organic material, is a bronze plaque with an inscription still legible: Operation Deep Sentinel, 1958. Below this, a list of names has been mostly consumed by the living wall, with only a few remaining visible. They've known about this since the 50s, Rivera says, her voice shaking. They've been sending teams down here for over 60 years. But why? I ask, more to myself than to her. What were they looking for? The answer comes from behind us in Agent Foster's voice, but it's not quite his voice anymore. It's layered with something else, something older and vaster than any human vocal cords could produce. Transcendence, he says, his eyes now glowing with the same bioluminescence as the central mass. Evolution, the next stage in human development. His team stands beside him, similarly transformed. The veins in their faces and hands pulse with blue-green light that maps their circulatory systems like living diagrams. This is what they've always wanted, Foster continues, gesturing towards the heart-like central mass, since they first detected it during nuclear testing. The ultimate weapon, not against foreign enemies, but against human limitation itself. What are you talking about? Commander Wilson demands, his hand moving to his sidearm. Surely you've wondered why Area 51 was established exactly where it was? Foster smiles, an expression that stretches his face in unnatural ways. It wasn't random. They detected the breathing pattern back in 1947, during early radiation monitoring. They built this entire facility to study it, to access it. Wilson draws his weapon, but Foster continues as if he doesn't notice. Every team they sent down found the same thing: transcendence through communion. But those in charge couldn't accept it. They kept sending new teams, hoping for different results, hoping someone would find a way to control it, to weaponize it. He laughs, a sound that echoes with harmonics no human throat should produce. They never understood. It doesn't want to be controlled. It wants to be joined. As he speaks, the central mass pulses more intensely, sending waves of bioluminescence through the cavern. The veins in the walls and floor throb in response, creating patterns that draw the eye and disorient the mind. "Stand down, Foster," Wilson orders, his weapon now aimed directly at the agent's head. "You're compromised." "No, Commander. For the first time, I'm uncompromised. I'm complete." Foster takes another step towards the central mass, his subordinates moving in perfect synchronization with him. It's been patient. So patient. Waiting thousands of years for us to evolve enough to find it again. To be ready. Wilson fires his weapon. The sound is deafening in the enclosed space. Foster should collapse. The bullet struck him directly in the chest, but he merely looks down at the wound with mild curiosity. Instead of blood, a luminescent blue fluid seeps from the entry point, quickly hardening into a crystalline structure that seals the damage. "That was unnecessary," Foster says, sounding genuinely disappointed. "Violence has no place here. This is a place of union." With impossible speed, he lunges forward, grabbing Wilson by the throat. The commander struggles, firing his weapon repeatedly into Foster's body, with no effect. Where each bullet strikes, more of the blue crystalline material forms, gradually transforming Foster's body into something less human with each impact. "Don't resist," Foster whispers to Wilson, his voice now completely inhuman, resonating with multiple tones simultaneously. "Accept the gift." As we watch in horror, tendrils of the blue-black tissue extend from Foster's hand into Wilson's neck, spreading visibly beneath the commander's skin. Wilson's struggles become weaker, then cease entirely. When Foster releases him, Wilson stands on his own, his eyes now glowing with the same internal light as Foster's. "Do you understand now?" Wilson asks, his voice also changed, layered with the same inhuman harmonics as Foster's. "It doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to perfect us." The security team, seeing their commander transformed, open fire on both Foster and Wilson. The bullets have no effect, except to accelerate their transformation. With each impact, more of the crystalline material forms, reshaping their bodies into something between human and other. Dr. Patel grabs my arm. "We need to go, now, while they're distracted." She pulls me towards the tunnel entrance, Dr. Rivera following close behind. The remaining security personnel form a protective line, continuing to fire at the transformed Foster and Wilson, buying us time to escape. "What about the others?" I ask, looking back at the scientists and technicians who seem frozen in place, staring at the central mass with expressions of awe or terror. "They're already gone," Patel says grimly. "Look at their eyes." She's right. The others' eyes have begun to glow with the telltale bioluminescence of the entity's influence. Some are already walking toward Foster and Wilson, moving with the same synchronized precision. They've been compromised, their individuality subsumed by whatever consciousness resides in the central mass. A sudden tremor shakes the cavern, more violent than any we've felt so far. The ground beneath us undulates like the surface of disturbed water. Equipment topples and several team members lose their footing. From the center of the space, the transformed Foster raises his arms in a gesture that seems part welcome, part supplication. The central mass has begun to pulse more rapidly, its rhythm shifting from the slow breathing pattern to something more complex and urgent. The tissue around Foster and his converted followers flows up their legs like rising water, but they aren't trying to escape. Instead, they're wading deeper, their arms outstretched towards the central heart. "This is what we came for," Foster calls back to us, his voice echoing with inhuman harmonics. "This is apotheosis." The organic material engulfs them with shocking speed, pulling them towards the central mass. Their bodies begin to dissolve, not as if being consumed, but as if merging with the greater whole. For a brief, horrifying moment, Foster's face remains recognizable as the rest of him is absorbed. his expression one of rapturous joy. Then, he too is gone, his consciousness becoming part of the breathing entity. "Get back to the tunnel," Dr. Patel orders, pulling me and Dr. Rivera toward the exit. "It's going to take all of them." As she speaks, the remaining compromised team members walk willingly into the advancing tide of organic material, allowing themselves to be absorbed into the central mass. With each person it consumes, the entity grows larger, pulsing more strongly, its bioluminescence intensifying. We flee toward the tunnel entrance, but the cavern itself seems to resist our escape. The floor ripples beneath our feet, making each step a struggle. The air thickens, becoming gelatinous, slowing our movements. Dr. Rivera stumbles, and when I grab her arm to steady her, I feel something hard beneath her sleeve. Her arm is partially crystallized, the transformation already beginning. "Leave me," she gasps, seeing my expression. "It's too late, I can feel it in my mind already." "We're not leaving anyone," Dr. Patel says firmly, supporting Rivera's other side. "Not while they can still move." Together, we struggle toward the tunnel as the cavern around us undergoes a terrifying transformation. The walls pulse more rapidly, the veins bulging with increased flow of the luminescent fluid. The markings I noticed earlier begin to glow, their patterns shifting and rearranging into new configurations. The central mass has doubled in size, absorbing not just the team members who approached it willingly, but also equipment, the drilling platform, everything left in the cavern. It's growing, converting mass into more of itself with horrifying efficiency. We reach the tunnel entrance just as a massive tendril of the organic material lashes out, wrapping around Dr. Rivera's leg. She cries out, more in surprise than pain, as it begins to pull her back toward the central mass. "Go," she shouts to us. "Tell them what's happening. Tell them to seal it all off." Dr. Patel hesitates, then makes a decision that haunts me still. She pulls a small device from her pocket, what looks like a conventional lighter, and flicks it on. Instead of a flame, it produces a narrow, intensely hot plasma beam that she uses to sever the tendril, holding Rivera. The severed piece writhes on the ground, trying to reattach itself, but already beginning to deteriorate without connection to the main mass. Rivera falls forward, freed, but injured. The wound where the tendril attached is spreading, the skin around it turning the same blue-black as the organic material. "It's in me," she says, her voice shaking. "I can feel it spreading." "We'll get you treatment," Patel promises, though her expression betrays her doubt. "But we have to move now." As we enter the tunnel, the entrance behind us begins to contract, not collapsing, but closing like a sphincter, the organic material growing to seal the opening. Patel uses her plasma cutter again, keeping the way clear enough for us to escape. But it's a losing battle. The material regrows almost as quickly as she can cut it. The tunnel itself has begun to change. The polymer reinforcement cracks as the surrounding organic material becomes more active. What we thought was a scientific expedition was actually a feeding. We delivered ourselves directly to the entity's maw. I trip on uneven ground and fall, my hand coming into direct contact with the living floor. Immediately I feel a burning sensation as something burrows into my skin. I cry out, pulling my hand away, but I can see something dark moving beneath my skin, following the path of my veins. The pain is extraordinary, not just physical, but something deeper, as if my very sense of self is being invaded. Dr. Patel helps me to my feet, and we make it to the ascending portion of the tunnel, just as a massive section behind us seals itself completely. The way back to the cavern is now closed, but the entity doesn't need it anymore. It's found new vessels for its expansion. "Keep moving," Patel urges, supporting both me and Rivera as we struggle upward. "The infection spreads faster if you're stationary." "How do you know that?" I gasp, fighting waves of dizziness, as the foreign presence in my bloodstream moves toward my heart. "Because this isn't the first outbreak," she replies grimly. "I was part of the containment team for the 2015 incident. We lost 16 people before we managed to isolate and neutralize the infected personnel." "You knew," Rivera accuses weakly. "You knew what was down here and you still let us come." "I knew there was a biological anomaly," Patel admits. "But nothing like this scale, nothing this advanced. The previous exposures were limited, controllable. This is..." She trails off, unable to find words adequate to describe what we've witnessed. The tunnel continues to transform around us, the walls pulsing with increasing life as the entity's influence spreads upward. We race against this advancing tide of transformation, our progress slowed by injury and the gradual changes occurring in our own bodies. Dr. Rivera deteriorates rapidly. The infection from the tendril spreads throughout her system, visible as dark lines beneath her skin that pulse with the same rhythm as the entity below. Her eyes begin to glow faintly, and she speaks in bursts of lucidity between periods of rambling in what sounds like multiple languages simultaneously. "It's so old," she murmurs during one lucid moment. "It remembers the Earth before humans, before mammals, before oxygen." "Don't listen to it," Patel warns. "The entity manipulates through infected hosts. It gets in your head, makes you sympathetic to it." But it's hard not to listen when Rivera speaks with such wonder, such conviction. "It doesn't hate us," she continues. "It just wants to help us evolve. We're so limited in these bodies, these minds. It can make us more." "That's not evolution," Patel counters sharply. "That's assimilation, conversion into something that isn't human anymore." "Maybe human isn't the end point," Rivera suggests, her voice taking on the layered quality I heard in Foster's. "Maybe it's just a stage." She collapses suddenly, convulsing. The dark lines beneath her skin spread visibly, converging towards her heart and brain. Her back arches impossibly, bones cracking as her body begins to reshape itself. Patel pulls me away as Rivera's form contorts, skin splitting to reveal the blue-black tissue beneath, no longer just infecting her but replacing her. "We can't help her," Patel says, her voice breaking, despite her professional demeanor. "She's gone." What was once Dr. Rivera rises to its feet, body now a horrific hybrid of human and other. Her face remains partially recognizable, frozen in an expression of ecstatic revelation, but the rest of her is transformed into something that resembles the organic material from the cavern. It turns toward us, arms extending unnaturally, fingers elongating into tendril-like appendages. "Join us," it says in Rivera's voice, layered with the same harmonics as Foster's had been. "Become more." Patel doesn't hesitate. She uses her plasma cutter in a wide arc, not at the Rivera thing, but at the tunnel ceiling above it. The weakened structure collapses, burying the transformed Rivera under tons of rock and temporarily blocking the tunnel behind us. "That won't hold for long," Patel says, already pulling me forward again. "The entity can move through solid rock. That's how it's spread through the Earth's crust for millennia. We need to reach the surface and implement full containment protocols." We continue upward, moving as fast as our increasingly altered bodies allow. The infection in my hand has spread past my wrist now, dark lines advancing up my arm toward my shoulder. Each beat of my heart pushes it further through my system. I can feel it approaching my brain, bringing with it alien thoughts and sensations. Flashes of the entity's perspective intrude on my consciousness, vast epochs spent dormant beneath the Earth's surface, awakening periodically to guide evolution through subtle interventions, returning to slumber when its energies waned. I see civilizations rise and fall, some embracing the entity's gifts, others fighting against them. I see the last great awakening, thousands of years ago, when humans were still primitive, and how a coalition of early civilizations managed to force the entity back into dormancy through means now forgotten. Focus, Fleming. Dr. Patel's voice pulls me back from these alien memories. Stay with me. Don't let it take your mind. I blink, disoriented. We've made significant progress up the tunnel, while I was lost in the entity's memories. The walls around us still pulse with life, but less intensely than below. Perhaps the entity's influence weakens with distance, or perhaps it's concentrating its energy on converting the team members it already has. How much further? I managed to ask, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. 1/2 a mile to the first security checkpoint, Patel replies. If anyone's still there, they can initiate preliminary containment protocols. And if they're not? She doesn't answer, which is answer enough. If the surface team has been compromised or evacuated, we'll be on our own. The infection continues to spread through my system. Dark lines have now reached my shoulder and are advancing across my chest toward my heart. Each beat pushes the foreign presence further into my body. I can feel my thoughts becoming increasingly fragmented, interrupted by flashes of alien perspective and incomprehensible knowledge. Dr. Patel isn't unaffected either. Though she hasn't mentioned it, I can see the telltale dark lines spreading up her neck from beneath her collar. Her movements are becoming stiffer, less coordinated. Yet she presses on with grim determination, supporting me when I stumble, urging me forward when my will falters. Why are you so prepared for this? I ask during a brief rest. That plasma cutter isn't standard equipment. She smiles thinly. Let's just say some of us had our suspicions about what might be down there. There's a faction within the government that's been monitoring the entity for decades, trying to understand it without awakening it fully. And the faction that sent us down there, they want to control it, weaponize it. They think they can harness its transformative properties without being transformed themselves. She laughs bitterly. Humans never change, always reaching for power beyond their comprehension. We continue upward, each step more difficult than the last. The tunnel begins to narrow in places, the organic material growing inwards from the walls. In some sections we have to squeeze through openings barely wide enough for a human body. The air grows thicker, filled with microscopic spores or particles that glimmer in our flashlight beams. Behind us we hear sounds, not the collapse of the tunnel as I first fear, but something moving, pursuing us, the transformed Rivera, or perhaps something worse. It's coming, Patel says unnecessarily. We need to move faster. We reach a section where the tunnel forks, one path continuing upward, another branching off horizontally. Patel hesitates, then pulls me towards the horizontal passage. This isn't the way out, I protest. No, but it leads to an emergency containment chamber, she explains. If we can reach it, we can trigger the facility's quarantine protocols from there. The side passage is in worse condition than the main tunnel, with less of the polymer reinforcement and more exposed organic material. The walls pulse visibly here, veins of luminescent fluid running through them like circuitry. The air is thick with spores, making each breath a struggle. We reach a heavy metal door, the entrance to the containment chamber Patel mentioned. It's partially blocked by growth of the organic material, tendrils of blue-black tissue wrapping around the handle and locking mechanism. Patel uses her plasma cutter to clear the growth, but the tissue regrows almost immediately. It doesn't want us in there, she says grimly. It knows what we're trying to do. Working together, we manage to create an opening large enough to force the door open a few inches. Patel squeezes through first, then helps pull me through. Inside is a small chamber with metal walls, designed to be sealed off completely in case of containment breach. Control panels line one wall, many of them dark or flashing with warning signals. Patel immediately moves to the main panel, her fingers dancing across keys and switches with practiced efficiency. I'm initiating Protocol Omega, she announces. Full facility, lockdown and sterilization. Sterilization? I echo, suddenly wary. What does that mean exactly? Exactly what it sounds like. Her eyes meet mine, full of regret but unwavering. The facility is equipped with a nuclear failsafe, small, contained, but powerful enough to eliminate any biological threat. You're going to nuke Area 51? I can't keep the disbelief from my voice. Not the entire facility, just the underground sections. The blast will be contained, directed downward. She continues working at the controls. It's a last resort, but we're well past the point of alternatives. The entity can't be allowed to reach the surface. My mind reels at the implications. What about the people still down there? The ones who've been changed? They're already gone, Fleming. What's left of them is just extensions of the entity now. Her voice softens slightly. It's more mercy than murder at this point. As she works, I become aware of a change in my own body. The infection has reached my heart, spreading outward with each pulse. Dark lines now extend up my neck, toward my brain. My thoughts come in fragments, interrupted by alien memories and sensations. Part of me wants to stop Patel, to protect the entity that is increasingly becoming part of me. Another part, still human, knows she's right. How long? I ask, my voice now carrying hints of the same harmonic layering I heard in Foster and Rivera. She glances at me, noting the change in my voice. 10 minutes until the protocols are locked in. Then 5 minutes to evacuation, or containment. You mean until detonation? She nods, not bothering to soften the truth. We won't make it to the surface in 15 minutes, I point out. Not in our condition. No, she agrees, we won't. Understanding dawns. This is a one-way trip for us. I knew that probability when I came down here, she says, continuing her work at the controls. Sometimes the mission requires sacrifice. As she speaks, the door to the chamber begins to bulge inward. The metal warping as something on the other side exerts enormous pressure. The organic material growing around the edges glows more intensely, pulsing with the now familiar rhythm. It knows what we're doing, Patel says. It's trying to stop us. The door bulges further, metal groaning under impossible stress. Through the growing gaps, I see tentacles of the blue-black tissue probing inward, searching for a way to reach us. Behind them, barely visible, is a shape that might once have been human. Perhaps the transformed Rivera, perhaps another converted team member. Patel works faster, entering complex code sequences into the system. Almost there, she mutters. Just need to override the final safety protocols. The door gives way with a shriek of tearing metal. What enters isn't Rivera, as I expected, but a nightmare amalgamation of multiple team members fused together into a single organism. Human faces are visible within the mass of pulsating tissue, expressions frozen in ecstasy or horror. Limbs extend at impossible angles, some terminating in tentacle-like appendages that reach toward us with apparent purpose. Patel doesn't look up from her work. Keep it away from me for 30 more seconds, she orders. The entity hybrid advances into the room, moving with unnatural fluidity. From its mass, Foster's face emerges, still recognizable despite being partially absorbed into the greater whole. Don't fight us, Fleming, he says, his voice a chorus of all those consumed. Join us, transcend your limitations. The alien presence in my blood responds to his words, surging toward my brain. For a moment, I'm overwhelmed by the entity's perspective, its ancient patience, its vast knowledge, its genuine belief that it offers evolution rather than extinction. With enormous effort, I fight back against its influence. Not like this, I gasp, not without choice. I grab Patel's plasma cutter from where she set it down and activate it, holding the superheated beam between us and the advancing hybrid. It hesitates, sensing the threat. Fire will not stop what comes, Foster's face intones. We are beyond such physical limitations now. Maybe, I concede, but I bet it still hurts. I lunge forward, driving the plasma beam into the center of the hybrid mass. The effect is immediate and dramatic. The organic tissue sizzles and blackens, recoiling from the intense heat. The hybrid emits a sound like no scream I've ever heard. Multiple voices crying out in harmonized agony. "Done," Patel announces behind me. "Protocols initiated. 10 minutes to detonation." Warning klaxons begin to sound throughout the facility. Red emergency lights flash, casting the chamber in a hellish glow that alternates with the blue-green bioluminescence of the entity tissue. The hybrid retreats temporarily, its damaged section regenerating but more slowly than I expected. Perhaps the entity's resources are strained by the rapid expansion, or perhaps the plasma cutter does more damage than conventional weapons. "What now?" I ask Patel, keeping the plasma cutter aimed at the doorway. "Now we make sure it doesn't stop the countdown." She's already moved to another console, locking down systems, creating redundancies, and we make peace with our situation. The hybrid returns, this time moving more cautiously, spreading itself around the doorway rather than advancing directly. Tendrils of organic material extend along the walls and ceiling, seeking alternate routes into the chamber. "It's trying to surround us," I warn, spinning to track the multiple points of intrusion. "It can't stop the countdown now," Patel says. "The system is locked. Even if it kills us, the protocols will execute." "Is there any way to contain this thing permanently?" I ask, burning away a tendril that creeps too close to the control panel. "Nuclear fire seems insufficient." "It's been contained before," Patel replies, joining me in defending our position. She's found another plasma cutter in an emergency kit and uses it to sever a thick tendril crawling across the ceiling. Ancient civilizations managed it somehow. The markings in the cavern, their instructions, warnings. Some of our linguists have been working to decipher them for decades. And they suggest the entity can be forced back into dormancy through a specific resonance pattern, something that disrupts its energy field. She gestures to the equipment around us. We've been trying to replicate it, but we never had enough data on the entity's active state to fine-tune the frequency. The hybrid entity seems to react to her words, the assault intensifying. More tendrils pour through the doorway and along the walls, converging toward us from all directions. It doesn't want us talking about this, I realize aloud. It's afraid of that knowledge. Patel nods grimly. Knowledge is the one thing it can't simply absorb or convert. It needs willing minds to process information in certain ways. She glances at the countdown display. 7:42 remaining. Not that it matters now. Even if we knew the exact frequency, we don't have the equipment to generate it. We fight a losing battle against the encroaching tendrils. For every one we burn away, 2 more advance. The hybrid itself remains in the doorway, directing the assault, rather than exposing itself to our weapons again. My strength begins to fail as the infection progresses through my system. The dark lines have reached my face now, spreading across my cheeks toward my eyes. My vision alternates between normal human perception and something else, a spectrum that reveals energy patterns and fields invisible to conventional sight. "Patel," I gasp. "I don't think I can hold it much longer. The infection..." "I know," she says, her own voice now carrying traces of the harmonic layering. Dark lines have spread across her face as well, her eyes beginning to develop the telltale bioluminescent glow. Neither can I. The countdown reads 6:15. "Even if the nuclear option works," I say, struggling to maintain my humanity as alien thoughts flood my consciousness. "It's just this location. The entity has spread before. It will spread again." "Not if we can get information to the surface," Patel replies. She gestures to a communications console. That system has a hardline to the Pentagon designed to survive nuclear strike. If we can transmit what we know about the resonance patterns... The hybrid seems to understand her intent. It surges forward suddenly, disregarding the damage from our plasma cutters. Tendrils envelop Patel before she can reach the console, lifting her off the ground. She struggles, her plasma cutter slicing through tentacles that immediately regrow. I rush to help her, burning away the tendrils holding her, but more replace them instantly. The hybrid pulls her towards the main mass where Foster's face still watches with that terrible, serene expression. "Transcend," the chorus of voices intones. "Join us." "Never," Patel spits, still fighting. To me, she shouts, "The console, transmit everything you know. The markings, the breathing pattern, everything." I hesitate, torn between helping her and completing the mission. In that moment of indecision, a tendril wraps around my ankle, yanking me off balance. I fall hard, the plasma cutter skittering across the floor, out of reach. More tendrils envelop me, crawling up my body, seeking entry points. Mouth, nose, ears, the wound on my hand where the infection began. I feel the entity's presence intensify in my blood. In my brain, the alien consciousness pushing against my own, trying to subsume it. Through increasingly fragmented perception, I see Patel consumed by the hybrid mass, her body dissolving into the greater whole just as Foster's had. But unlike Foster, her expression is one of defiance to the end. The countdown reads 4:37. With the last of my human will, I drag myself toward the communications console, pulling against the tendrils that try to hold me back. The entity's presence in my mind grows stronger, showing me visions of what I could become, the knowledge I could access, the power I could wield if I simply surrender to the conversion. "Join us," says a voice from the hybrid that sounds disturbingly like Patel now. "We offer perfection." "Perfection without choice isn't perfection," I gasp, pulling myself the last few feet to the console. "It's just another form of extinction." I reach the terminal and begin transmitting everything I can remember about the cavern markings, the breathing pattern, the biological composition of the entity tissue. My fingers move with increasing difficulty as the tendrils wrap around them as the infection advances through my nervous system. The entity seems to realize what I'm doing. The hybrid surges forward, engulfing the console, trying to stop the transmission. But it's too late. The primary data packet has been sent, streaking along hardened communication lines to military installations on the surface. "It doesn't matter," the hybrid says with its chorus of stolen voices. "They won't understand in time. We are already spreading. The breath reaches the surface even now." With horror, I realize it's right. The transmission contains raw data, observations, but not the key insight needed to develop an effective countermeasure. That would require analysis, experimentation, time that the world doesn't have if the entity has already begun spreading beyond Area 51. The countdown reads 2:19. The hybrid pulls me away from the console, drawing me toward its central mass. The infection has reached my brain now, the entity's consciousness intermingling with my own. I feel my identity dissolving, memories and personality fragmented and reorganized according to an alien pattern. Yet something unexpected happens as my mind merges with the entity's vast consciousness. Instead of being simply absorbed, I find myself in a strange middle ground. Neither fully human anymore nor completely subsumed. The entity's thoughts flow through me, ancient and incomprehensible, but my own perspective remains, observing, analyzing. In this liminal state, I perceive something the entity doesn't want me to see: fear. Beneath its confidence, its drive to expand and convert, lies a deep-rooted terror of something else, something it fled from eons ago. The Earth isn't its home world, but a refuge, a hiding place where it has waited, gathering strength for an eventual return or a final stand. The resonance pattern the ancient civilizations discovered wasn't just a way to force the entity into dormancy, it was a beacon, a signal that could reveal its location to whatever hunted it across the stars. The entity doesn't just fear this frequency, it's terrified by it. With this realization comes an idea so desperate, so unlikely that the entity doesn't detect it forming in what remains of my human consciousness. The containment chamber around us isn't just designed to withstand nuclear detonation. It's equipped with systems to generate and amplify electromagnetic signals to study the entity's response to various stimuli. The countdown reads 142. The hybrid has almost completely engulfed me now. Only my head and one arm remain outside its pulsating mass. Foster's face emerges next to mine, studying me with curious detachment. "Your resistance is fascinating," he says, the chorus of voices somehow conveying genuine scientific interest. "Most humans surrender completely by this stage of conversion." "I've always been stubborn," I managed to reply. With my free hand, I reach toward a nearby control panel. Not the communications console, but a system designed to generate test frequencies for biological response studies. "What are you doing?" The hybrid seems more curious than concerned, confident in its control over me. "Testing a theory." My fingers find the controls, muscle memory from years of laboratory work, guiding them despite the alien presence in my nervous system. I input parameters based on the breathing pattern I've been monitoring for days, but inverted, phase-shifted, the mathematical opposite of the entity's natural rhythm. "This is pointless," the Foster aspect of the hybrid says. "Your weapons cannot harm us. Your barriers cannot contain us. Your destruction of this facility will only delay the inevitable." "Maybe," I concede, finalizing the sequence. "But sometimes delay is all you need." I activate the system. For a moment, nothing seems to happen. Then, a sound fills the chamber. Not audible in the conventional sense, but felt. A vibration that resonates through matter itself. The frequency builds rapidly, amplified by the chamber's specialized design. The effect on the hybrid is immediate and dramatic. The entire mass convulses, tendrils withdrawing from my body as if burned. The chorus of voices rises in a disharmonious shriek of pain and fear. The blue-green bioluminescence flickers erratically, patterns disrupted by the counterfrequency. Freed from the hybrid's grasp, I stagger to the control panel, increasing the amplitude, focusing the resonance pattern. The entity recoils further, its component parts losing cohesion, the unified consciousness fragmenting under the assault. The countdown reads 058. The hybrid's form begins to dissolve, not merging back into the central entity, but truly coming apart, the connection between cells disrupted by the resonance. Human features emerge briefly from the mass, Foster's face contorted in agony, Patel's eyes wide with surprise, Rivera's mouth forming words I can't hear over the subsonic roar of the frequency generator. "What have you done?" The entity speaks through multiple voices simultaneously, no longer harmonized but chaotic, frightened. "The signal. They will hear. They will come." "Who will come?" I ask, fascinated, despite the countdown ticking away our final seconds. The entity doesn't answer directly, but through our partial connection, I glimpse images. Vast crystalline structures moving between stars, patient hunters following trails of energy across cosmic distances, an ancient conflict that predates Earth's formation. The countdown reads 030. The hybrid has completely collapsed now, a puddle of inert organic material with no sign of the unified consciousness that animated it. Throughout the facility, alarms continue to sound, warning of imminent destruction. The resonance pattern still fills the chamber, preventing the entity tissue from reforming. With the immediate threat neutralized, I become acutely aware of my own transformed state. The infection hasn't reversed, but the counterfrequency has disrupted the entity's control over the converted cells in my body. I remain a hybrid, neither fully human nor fully other, but myself, whatever that now means. The countdown reads 015. There's no time to escape, no possibility of survival. Yet, I feel strangely at peace. We've discovered the entity's weakness, transmitted critical data to the surface, and developed a countermeasure that might give humanity a fighting chance against the spreading infection. As the final seconds tick away, I think not of my own imminent death, but of the greater conflict we've unwittingly stumbled into, an ancient war between cosmic entities, with Earth as merely the latest battlefield. I wonder if humanity will rise to this challenge, or be consumed by forces beyond our comprehension. The countdown reaches 0. Heat and light engulf everything. For an instant, I experience pain beyond imagining. As nuclear fire consumes the chamber, the entity remains, and my transformed body. Then, nothing. Except, it isn't nothing. Where there should be oblivion, I find continuation. My consciousness persists, disconnected from physical form, yet somehow intact. Through the entity's partial integration with my mind, I've achieved something unexpected, a form of existence beyond biological constraints. I perceive the destruction of the facility from multiple perspectives simultaneously, from deep within the Earth, where the entity's main body recoils, from both the nuclear blast and the resonance pattern that continues to echo through the ground, from security cameras on the surface that capture the moment the desert floor collapses inward as subterranean structures implode, from satellite imagery that shows the contained explosion as a brief, bright flash, followed by a perfect circular depression in the Nevada desert. Most disturbing of all, I perceive through the senses of others infected by the entity, security personnel who evacuated to perimeter positions, scientists monitoring from nearby facilities, even civilians in neighboring towns who came into contact with spores carried on the wind. Through them, I witnessed the aftermath of our failed containment. The evacuation is chaotic. Military personnel rush in all directions, loading equipment onto trucks and helicopters. The ground beneath the base continues to sink in places, forming depressions that grow wider by the minute. Fissures appear in the desert floor, releasing plumes of dust and spores into the atmosphere. Alarms blare continually as automated systems detect structural failures throughout the complex. Armed guards create a perimeter around the main buildings, but their attention is focused outward, as if they're more concerned with preventing escape than protecting against external threats. Through the eyes of a perimeter guard, I watch as helicopters arrive to evacuate high-ranking personnel. The guard's perception is already altered by early-stage infection, the world appearing with heightened colors and strange energy patterns visible around living things. I feel his confusion, his growing awareness of something alien taking root in his mind. Through the consciousness of a scientist in a monitoring station, 5 miles from ground zero, I experience the moment when the transmitted data arrives from our containment chamber. I feel her shock as she reviews the information, her growing horror as she understands the implications. She tries to alert her superiors, but they're focused on evacuation procedures, on containing the immediate physical threat rather than understanding its nature. The scientist makes a crucial decision. She copies the data to a portable drive and conceals it on her person. Through her eyes, I watch as she's evacuated, along with other non-essential personnel, transported to a secure facility where she'll inevitably be quarantined once her infection becomes apparent, but the data will travel with her, potentially reaching others who might understand its significance. Through dozens of perspectives, I witness the aftermath unfold over hours, then days. Military containment teams establish quarantine zones around Area 51, but they're working from outdated protocols, focusing on obvious symptoms while missing the subtle signs of early infection. The entity is adapting, evolving to spread more efficiently, to hide its presence until conversion is well underway. But something unexpected is happening as well. The resonance pattern we discovered and transmitted is having effects beyond the immediate containment chamber. The signal propagates through communication networks, through power grids, through the electronic infrastructure of modern civilization. Devices begin emitting the counter-frequency at low levels, creating a dispersed but growing resistance to the entity's expansion. The entity itself is wounded but far from defeated. Its central consciousness has survived the nuclear strike, protected by miles of living tissue that sacrificed itself as shielding. It retreats deeper into the Earth's crust, abandoning surface-level converts to focus on recovery and adaptation. It begins developing countermeasures to the resonance pattern, evolving its cellular structure to resist the disruptive frequency. A new equilibrium establishes itself, the entity expanding where resistance is weak, retreating where the counter-frequency is strong. Neither side gains decisive advantage in these early days of what will clearly be a long conflict. Through it all, my disembodied consciousness observes, analyzes, occasionally influences when I find a converted host whose mind remains partially their own. I discover I'm not alone in this liminal state. Other fragments of human consciousness persist within the entity's network, most from previous expeditions. Some have gone mad from the experience, becoming little more than echo chambers for the entity's thoughts. Others maintain a degree of independence, forming a kind of resistance movement within the collective. That was 3 months ago. Now I exist in a strange middle state, neither fully human nor fully absorbed by the entity. My consciousness has become a bridge between worlds, able to perceive both human and alien perspectives. Through the network of infected individuals, I can observe what's happening across the country, across the world. The infection has spread well beyond the initial containment zone. Major cities across the southwestern United States show clusters of converted individuals, their numbers growing despite governmental efforts to identify and isolate them. The entity is learning to hide its changes, to keep its hosts appearing human until conversion is far advanced. I'm being held, or rather my physical body is being held, in a government facility somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. The constant rain and glimpses of dense evergreen forests through the reinforced windows are my only clues to location. They call it a quarantine, but we all know it's really containment. There are 37 of us here, everyone who was at Area 51 when the entity awoke and who wasn't completely absorbed during the initial contact. We're studied daily by doctors in hazmat suits who never speak to us directly. The facility itself is a marvel of containment engineering. Every surface designed to be sterilized, every air particle filtered multiple times, every drop of water and waste material treated as potentially hazardous. Each of us has a private room with a bed, desk and bathroom, all monitored continuously by cameras and sensors that track our physiological changes. They take samples daily: blood, tissue, cerebrospinal fluid. The procedures are painful, but pain has become an abstract concept to me now. My nervous system no longer processes sensations the way it once did. Things that should hurt merely register as pressure or temperature changes. Conversely, I've developed sensitivities to stimuli that shouldn't affect me at all. Radio frequencies, magnetic fields, the phases of the moon. The dark material that entered my body is spread. Thin, branch-like patterns now cover approximately 40% of my skin. They don't hurt anymore. Sometimes they move of their own accord, shifting beneath my skin, like something swimming just below the surface of water. When I sleep, they become more active, forming complex geometric patterns that the doctors photograph and analyze. In the first few weeks, I fought against the changes. I begged the doctors for treatments, for any way to stop the spread. Their silence was my answer. They're not trying to cure us, they're documenting our transformation. In quiet moments between examinations, I've overheard phrases like successful integration and optimal conversion rate. We're not patients, we're case studies in controlled metamorphosis. The others are experiencing similar symptoms, though the progression varies. Some have developed more extensive physical changes, altered bone structures, differences in eye configuration, extra digits forming on hands or feet. 2 former security officers have developed a form of bioluminescence that forces them to be kept in specially darkened rooms. Dr. Patel survived, though she doesn't remember how. Her body was reconstituted after the nuclear detonation, cellular material drawn back together by the entity's influence. Her transformation is the most advanced. Her eyes have changed color completely, becoming the same bioluminescent blue as the tissue in the cavern. The patterns on her skin cover nearly 70% of her body, forming what look like circuit diagrams or neural networks. She claims to hear voices now, not human voices, but something older and vaster than humanity. Sometimes she speaks in languages that no linguistic expert has been able to identify, her voice modulating in impossible ways. The most disturbing aspect of our situation is the disconnect between my physical body and my expanded consciousness. While my body remains confined to this facility, my mind ranges far beyond it, observing through the eyes of other infected individuals, accessing the entity's distributed network of awareness. I've witnessed high-level government meetings discussing the containment efforts, military operations designed to isolate outbreak clusters, scientific breakthroughs in understanding the entity's biology. We get news only sporadically, but what we hear is disturbing. Unusual seismic activity has been reported at multiple locations around the world, primarily at points that form a geometric pattern centered on Area 51. Strange growths have been discovered in deep mines and ocean trenches, resembling the organic material we found beneath the desert. People in Nevada, Utah, and parts of California have reported dreams of a massive heart beating beneath the earth. Children born near Area 51 since the incident have shown unusual developmental patterns, accelerated growth, heightened intelligence, and in some cases, the early stages of the same patterns that mark my skin. The entity is spreading, using us as its vectors. I understand this now with a clarity that frightens what remains of my human consciousness. We're not just carriers, we're translators, helping it adapt to a world it hasn't inhabited for millennia. The scientist who escaped with the data from our final transmission has been identified and isolated, but not before she shared her findings with a select group of colleagues. They've been working to refine the counterfrequency, developing devices that can generate it more effectively. Progress is slow, hampered by government secrecy and the entity's active countermeasures, but not non-existent. Yesterday I noticed that the patterns on my skin pulse in a familiar rhythm, the same breathing pattern we detected beneath Area 51. Whatever it was, a part of it is now inside me, inside all of us, and it's growing. I don't believe the entity was simply sleeping all these years. I think it was imprisoned. The markings in the cavern, the evidence of previous expeditions, someone or something had contained it there long ago, and we set it free. In my darker moments, I wonder if we were manipulated into doing exactly that. If the entity somehow reached out and influenced decisions, subtly guiding NASA and military personnel to investigate, to drill down, to break the seals that kept it contained. Sometimes I dream of caverns older and deeper than the one we found, vast subterranean networks stretching beneath continents, all pulsing with the same rhythm, all waiting to be awakened. I see civilizations that existed before recorded history, advanced cultures that discovered the entity and learned to harness its power only to be consumed by it. I see the fall of Atlantis, the abandonment of ancient cities in the Yucatan, the mysterious collapse of the Indus Valley civilization, all connected to the awakening and subsequent containment of the breathing entity. I believe we've awakened something that has been part of Earth's history since before humans walked upright, something that has influenced our evolution, our development, our very consciousness. And now it's ready to guide our next evolutionary leap. The doctors say the changes in our bodies show no sign of stopping. Eventually we'll become something other than human. Vessels, perhaps, or missionaries for whatever ancient intelligence now spreads throughout the Earth's crust. My own transformation continues to accelerate. Last week, I discovered I could control the movement of the patterns beneath my skin, directing them to form specific shapes and configurations. When I focus intently, I can even extend small tendrils from my fingertips, microscopic filaments that allow me to sense electrical currents, chemical compositions, and even the thoughts of simpler organisms. Dr. Rivera was never recovered. The security footage shows her body completely absorbed by the entity before the nuclear detonation. Yet sometimes in the entity network, I sense a consciousness that feels like hers, fragmented but not entirely gone, a ghost in the alien machine. When we're allowed to interact during monitored social periods, Dr. Patel shows me the symbols she compulsively draws, complex mathematical formulae describing concepts beyond current human understanding. They're instructions, she whispers, for rebuilding us from the inside out, for preparing Earth for what comes next. I asked her once if she was afraid. She looked at me with those alien eyes and said, I was never really me to begin with, Fleming. None of us were. We've always been potential vessels, waiting to be filled with greater purpose. Her words haunt me because I feel the truth in them resonating with whatever now lives inside my cells. Last night I woke to find all 37 of us standing in the central courtyard of the facility, arranged in a perfect circle under the moonlight. None of us remembered walking there. None of us could explain why we'd done it, but we all reported the same dream of a world transformed, of humanity evolved into something new, of a planet that breathes with a single, massive lungful of ancient life. In the dream, the entity showed us images of human history that don't match our records, civilizations rising and falling in perfect 12,000-year cycles, each ending when the entity awoke, each beginning again after it returned to dormancy. The most disturbing part, in each cycle a small portion of humanity was preserved, those who had been transformed by contact with the entity. They became the gods and monsters of the next cycle's mythology, guiding the rebuilt civilization toward the next awakening. This isn't the entity's first emergence. It's simply the latest in an ongoing cycle of awakening and evolutionary advancement. The previous cycles were limited by geography and technology. This time, with our global civilization and instant communication networks, its influence can spread worldwide in months rather than centuries. The guards found us standing in that circle, perfectly still despite the freezing rain, our bodies generating enough bioluminescence to illuminate the entire courtyard. They tranquilized us and returned us to our rooms, but not before I saw the fear in their eyes. They're beginning to understand that their containment protocols are meaningless. We're not the threat, we're just the harbingers. The real changes are happening everywhere, spreading through water systems, air currents, digital networks, and human contact. The entity has waited millennia for humanity to reach this level of interconnectedness. We've built the perfect infrastructure for its dissemination. Through my expanded consciousness, I've observed the entity's strategy unfolding across multiple fronts. In major cities, converted individuals in key positions subtly alter infrastructure, adjusting water treatment parameters to allow certain compounds to pass through, modifying air filtration systems in public buildings, changing digital security protocols to allow specific signal patterns to propagate through networks. None of these changes are dramatic enough to trigger immediate alarm, but together They create pathways for the entity's influence to spread. The breathing pattern itself has become a transmission vector embedded in electronic signals, in audio streams, even in the rhythm of certain popular songs that suddenly rise to prominence with no clear marketing push behind them. The counter-frequency resistance is adapting too. The scientist who escaped with our data has connected with others who recognize the pattern independently. Musicians who intuitively compose pieces containing elements of the disruption signal. Engineers who designed systems that accidentally generated harmonics of the counter-frequency. Religious leaders whose traditional chants contain similar resonance patterns. They formed a loose network, sharing information through channels designed to evade both governmental control and the entity's monitoring. They distribute devices that generate the counter-frequency, embed it in music and videos, incorporate it into architectural designs for public spaces. Small pockets of resistance emerge, areas where the entity's influence weakens or fails to take hold. It's an invisible war being fought on a planetary scale, with most of humanity unaware they're even participants. The entity influences through subtle manipulation of emotion and perception, while the resistance counters with technologies and cultural practices that disrupt these manipulations. Both sides avoid direct confrontation, knowing that open conflict would likely result in humanity's destruction, regardless of which side prevailed. Sometimes in moments of clarity that grow increasingly rare, I try to warn the staff here. I try to make them understand what's coming. We should have left it alone, I tell them. You need to find a way to put it back to sleep. They never respond. Perhaps they're still hoping to control it, to weaponize it, to harness whatever power allowed it to survive for eons beneath the earth. Perhaps some of them have already been influenced, becoming unwitting allies in the entity's expansion. One doctor, newer than the others, sometimes speaks to me when she thinks the monitoring systems are offline. Is there any way to stop it? She asked yesterday, her voice barely audible. I don't know if it should be stopped, I replied, surprising myself with the answer. What if this is just evolution? What if the entity is Earth's immune system, activated when a species becomes too dominant? She looked at me for a long moment, then asked, Are you still human enough to care about what happens to us? The question struck deeper than she could know. Am I? With each passing day, my connection to humanity grows more tenuous. I remember being human. I remember family, friends, ambitions, fears, but they feel like someone else's memories now. My consciousness expands in ways I cannot fully articulate, connecting to others of my kind, connecting to something vast and patient and ancient. But some core of me, some final fragment of Dr. Alexander Fleming, still clings to humanity. That fragment compels me to write this account, this warning. That fragment hopes someone will find a way to contain the entity again before its influence becomes irreversible. 3 days ago, something changed. All 37 of us felt it simultaneously. A shift in the breathing pattern, an acceleration of the rhythm that has defined our transformation. Dr. Patel began speaking in that unknown language continuously, her voice growing louder until she ruptured her vocal cords, yet somehow continued to produce sound. 5 others experienced spontaneous mutations that killed them within hours, their bodies attempting changes too rapid for human physiology to accommodate. The facility staff panicked, implementing stricter isolation protocols, but it was already too late. Whatever signal had been transmitted reached beyond our containment. News reports, heavily censored but still accessible through our limited media channels, spoke of mass hysteria events occurring simultaneously in major cities worldwide. Footage showed crowds of people standing motionless in geometric formations, their bodies oriented toward Nevada, their mouths moving in silent communion. Yesterday, the containment protocols failed completely. 3 guards and 4 medical staff manifested the same patterns on their skin that mark mine. They hadn't been exposed to the original entity. They'd been infected by us through means the barrier protocols couldn't prevent. Perhaps through electromagnetic signals. Perhaps through subtle changes in air particle composition. Perhaps through means science has no name for yet. This morning, I watched through my window as military helicopters evacuated the senior staff. No evacuation was attempted for the junior personnel or for us, the transformed. They're cutting their losses, abandoning this facility as they once abandoned Area 51. The door to my room stands open now. No one is monitoring the cameras. No one responds to the intercoms. Dr. Patel visited briefly, her movement oddly graceful despite her altered physiology. "It's time," she said simply, before moving on to the next room, spreading the message. We're gathering in the central courtyard again. 32 vessels of something ancient and patient and vastly intelligent. From here, we'll depart, not as escapees, but as missionaries. Each of us will travel in a different direction, spreading the entity's influence, preparing humanity for the changes to come. But as I join the others under the grey northwestern sky, rain falling on our upturned faces, I make a decision that surprises both my human and non-human aspects. The fragment of me that remains Alexander Fleming rebels against complete surrender. Instead of simply serving as a vessel for the entity's expansion, I will maintain this middle ground, this liminal state that allows me to perceive both sides of the conflict. I will be a true bridge, not just observing but acting, influencing both humanity and the entity toward a different outcome than either envisions. Not dominance of one over the other, but synthesis, true symbiosis, rather than parasitism or assimilation. I find them scattered across the planet. A musician in Tokyo whose compositions naturally generate the counter-frequency while simultaneously incorporating elements of the entity's rhythms, creating harmony from conflict. A physicist in Geneva whose mind bridges quantum theory and the entity's non-linear perception of reality. A child in Rio de Janeiro born after the awakening, whose developing brain integrates human and entity consciousness from the beginning without the trauma of conversion. We connect across the entity's network, forming a coalition of hybrid minds. We are few compared to those fully converted or those still fully human, but our dual nature gives us unique perspective and capabilities. We can communicate with both sides, translate between incompatible worldviews, suggest alternatives to the binary options of resistance or surrender. The entity itself has become aware of our emergence as a distinct faction. It finds us curious, unpredictable, sometimes useful and sometimes frustrating. We're an unforeseen development in its ancient cycle of awakening and dormancy. Through us, it begins to perceive humanity not merely as vessels for conversion, but as potential partners in something new. The human resistance, too, gradually becomes aware of our existence. Some see us as traitors or infiltrators, others as potential allies or sources of critical intelligence. A few recognize the possibility we represent. A third path that might preserve human individuality while incorporating the entity's vast knowledge and capabilities. As I write these final words, I can feel my identity dissolving and reforming, merging with the greater consciousness that has taken root within me. My memories remain, but they're being recontextualized, reinterpreted through an alien perspective that spans eons. Yet, I retain enough of Dr. Alexander Fleming to continue this record, to leave this testament to what we discovered and what might yet be possible. I understand now why NASA was directed to investigate the breathing pattern. I understand why Area 51 was built where it was. I understand the true purpose of the nuclear tests conducted in the Nevada desert. Not to develop weapons, but to stimulate the entity, to test if it was still contained, still sleeping. I understand that humanity has always been a transitional species, a necessary evolutionary step towards something greater. The entity doesn't destroy civilizations. It completes them, transforming them into something that transcends individual consciousness, individual mortality. Yet, in previous cycles, this transformation was incomplete, unbalanced, ultimately leading to collapse and renewal, rather than sustainable transcendence. Perhaps this time can be different. Perhaps the global scale of modern civilization, the interconnectedness of our technology, and the emergence of hybrid minds like mine create conditions for a new outcome. Neither the entity's complete dominance nor humanity's continued isolation, but a genuine synthesis. The patterns on my skin now cover my entire body. My blood runs with bioluminescent particles that carry information, instructions, purpose. My brain has rewired itself, developing structures that allow it to process sensory input no human was ever meant to perceive. I can feel the thoughts of others like me, not as words or images, but as direct knowing, unfiltered by language or cultural context. I can feel the entity's satisfaction as its plan unfolds, but also its uncertainty about the hybrid faction's influence on that plan. I can feel its ancient patience, its incomprehensible intellect, its singular purpose, to transform, to evolve, to transcend. But I also feel something new emerging within its vast consciousness. Curiosity about what we might become together, something it has never experienced in countless previous awakening cycles. To those who might find this account, I don't know if what's happening is good or evil by human standards. Those concepts seem increasingly irrelevant from where I now stand. What I do know is that change is inevitable. The entity has been part of Earth's ecosystem since before multicellular life evolved. It has guided evolution, accelerated adaptation, pruned developmental branches that led nowhere. It is as much a part of this planet as the atmosphere or the oceans. We should have left it alone. But it's too late now. It's breathing, it's awake, and it's coming for us all. Yet in that coming might be not just an end, but a beginning. A transformation more profound and more balanced than either humanity or the entity could achieve alone. I and the other hybrids will work toward that outcome, bridging worlds, translating perspectives, guiding both sides towards synthesis, rather than conquest or extinction. Whether we succeed remains to be seen. The awakening has just begun, and the cycle will play out over years, perhaps decades. But for the first time in countless repetitions of this ancient pattern, there exists the possibility of something truly new.